A waitress secretly feeds 3 homeless girls every day. One morning, a luxury car parks in front of her restaurant. Before we jump in, tell me, where are you watching from? I'd love to know. The morning sun sliced through the grimy windows of the Sunshine Diner, casting long golden rectangles across the worn linoleum floor. Emma Chase tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear as she balanced 3 plates along her forearm. A skill perfected over years of waitressing at this small Brooklyn establishment, known for its crispy waffles and coffee strong enough to wake the dead. "Order up for table 7, she called cheerfully, despite the exhaustion tugging at her bones. The early shift always left her drained, but Emma couldn't afford to slow down. Not with rent due next week, and certainly not when there were 3 special visitors she expected at precisely 2:15 p.m. Frank, the diner's perpetually frowning manager, watched from behind the counter as Emma discreetly wrapped leftover pancakes and a few fresh sandwiches in napkins. His bushy eyebrows furrowed deeper than usual. "Emma," he said, voice low enough that only she could hear. "That's the 3rd time this week. Food costs money, you know. Money we don't have to spare." Emma met his gaze steadily. "It's just leftovers, Frank. Would go in the trash anyway." "Not all of it," he countered, nodding toward the freshly made sandwich she was wrapping. "Look, I get it. You've got a big heart. But this is a business, not a charity." Emma's retort was interrupted by the soft knock at the back door, 3 gentle taps followed by 2 quicker ones. A secret code she'd established weeks ago. Frank's disapproving glare followed her as she slipped toward the kitchen's rear exit. When Emma pushed open the heavy metal door, 3 pairs of eyes looked up at her, wary, hopeful, hungry. The oldest girl, Lily, stood protectively in front of her younger sisters. At 12, her childhood had already been replaced by responsibility far beyond her years. Behind her, 9-year-old Sophie clutched the hand of little Hazel, who at 6 still maintained the innocent wonder that her older sisters had long since lost. "You came," Emma said, her smile warm as she held out the food parcels. "I saved the blueberry pancakes for you today, Hazel. I remember you said they were your favorite." The smallest girl's face lit up, though she remained partially hidden behind Sophie. Lily was the only one who stepped forward, accepting the offerings with dignity rather than desperation, though Emma knew how desperately they needed it. "Thank you," Lily said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of someone far older. We brought you something too." From her tattered jacket pocket she produced 3 folded papers. Emma accepted them, carefully unfolding each to reveal childish drawings. Hazel's chaotic scribbles of what might be sunshine, Sophie's careful attempt at drawing the diner, and Lily's surprisingly detailed sketch of Emma herself, smiling behind the counter. "These are beautiful," Emma whispered, genuine, emotion tightening her throat. "I'll hang them up right away." As the girls prepared to leave with their precious food parcels, Emma noticed Lily's shoes, worn through at the soles, held together with what looked like tape. "Wait," she called, making the girls freeze momentarily. "It might rain later. Take this." She handed over her own umbrella, a small kindness that seemed to embarrass rather than comfort Lily. "We don't need charity," the girl said stiffly, though her eyes betrayed her gratitude. "It's not charity between friends," Emma replied gently. "It's just looking out for each other." As she watched the 3 sisters disappear down the alley, Emma felt the familiar ache in her chest. Who were these children? Where did they live? Why weren't they in school? She had gathered small pieces of their story over the weeks, enough to know they were in trouble but not enough to help in any meaningful way. Behind her, Frank cleared his throat. Emma turned to find him standing in the doorway, arms crossed. "This has to stop, Emma," he said firmly. "I mean it this time. Either you stop giving away free food or I'll have to let you go. I can't afford both your kindness and your salary." Emma pressed the children's drawings to her chest, her jaw set with determination as she brushed past him back into the kitchen. "Then I guess you'll have to let me go," she murmured, "because those girls need this food more than I need this job." But, even as she said it, panic fluttered in her stomach. Without this job, how would she pay her rent? And more importantly, who would feed those three hungry girls with the sad, ancient eyes? Emma's heart raced as she spotted Frank approaching, with determination in his eyes. The ultimatum still echoed in her mind. Stop feeding the girls or lose her job. Emma, this is your final warning, Frank said, voice unusually firm. I can't run a business this way. Before she could respond, the back door creaked open. 3 small figures huddled there, soaked from the sudden downpour. Lily's eyes were wide with fear, her sisters shivering behind her. Get in quickly, Emma whispered, ushering them toward the storage pantry as Frank turned to serve a customer. Stay quiet. Inside the cramped space among flour sacks and canned goods, Emma helped the girls out of their wet clothes and wrapped them in clean aprons. I'm sorry, Lily whispered, her voice catching. We wouldn't have come but the shelter where we've been staying. It flooded, Sophie continued, her small voice hollow. Everything got wet. Emma knelt to their level. Where's your mother? Maybe I can help contact her. The sisters exchanged glances before Lily spoke. She died last week. The funeral was yesterday. Her words were matter-of-fact, but her eyes betrayed depths of grief no child should know. Oh, God, Emma breathed, understanding crashing over her. You've been alone since then? Hazel nodded, clutching a worn teddy bear. Lily takes care of us. She always has, even when Mommy was sick. Emma fought back tears as Lily explained in halting sentences. Their mother's long illness, how they'd been living in a makeshift shelter beneath a highway overpass after being evicted, how Lily had been skipping school to ensure her sisters were fed. I promised Mom I'd keep us together, Lily said fiercely. They'll separate us in foster care, I've heard the stories. A sharp knock on the pantry door made them all jump. Emma? Are you in there? Frank called. Emma squeezed Lily's hand reassuringly before slipping out, pulling the door nearly closed. Behind her. What are you doing? Frank demanded. Inventory, Emma lied. Listen, Frank, I need to talk to you about something important. Before she could continue, the front door chimed. Both turned to see a tall figure entering, water dripping from an expensive coat. The entire diner fell silent as everyone recognized the newcomer. Jackson Reynolds had arrived. A hush fell over the Sunshine Diner as the tall man shook raindrops from his expensive coat. Even in his disheveled state, Jackson Reynolds commanded attention. His presence was so unexpected in this modest Brooklyn establishment that several customers stopped mid-bite. Frank hurried forward. Mr. Reynolds, what an honor to have you in our humble diner. Jackson barely acknowledged him, scanning the restaurant with bloodshot eyes shadowed by dark circles. His perfectly tailored suit couldn't hide the exhaustion that seemed to weigh on his broad shoulders. Just coffee. Black, he said, his voice hoarse as he slid into a corner booth. Emma watched curiously, while wiping down the counter. Everyone in New York knew Jackson Reynolds, the real estate mogul whose face graced business magazines and whose name adorned gleaming skyscrapers across Manhattan. What was he doing in their small diner, looking like he hadn't slept in days? I'll take this one, Emma told Frank, grabbing a coffee pot. As she approached Jackson's table, she noticed his attention fixed on something behind the counter. The drawings, the 3 colorful papers she'd pinned up just hours earlier. Your coffee, sir, Emma said, filling his cup. Jackson didn't look at her. Those drawings, he said, gesturing with a slight tremor in his hand. Where did you get them? They're from some children who visit occasionally, Emma replied carefully. Jackson's gaze finally met hers, his eyes a startling shade of blue even in their weariness. 3 girls? Ages approximately 12, 9, and 6? Emma's protective instincts flared. Why are you asking? Before he could answer, a small voice called from the pantry. Emma, can we come out now? Jackson went rigid, his face draining of color. Emma turned to see the pantry door crack open, Sophie's curious face peeking through. Wait there, Emma called, but it was too late. The 3 sisters emerged, Lily leading with cautious steps. The moment stretched like pulled taffy as Jackson and the girls stared at each other. Recognition flickered across Lily's face, followed immediately by fear. She stepped in front of her sisters, a human shield. "You're identical to the photos she sent," Jackson whispered, rising slowly from his seat. His voice cracked with emotion. "I would know you anywhere." Emma moved between them instinctively. "I don't know who you are to these girls, but you're scaring them." "I'm their father," Jackson said, never taking his eyes off the children. "And I've been searching for them for years." Lily's voice cut through the silence, sharp as broken glass. "If you're our father, where have you been all this time? Where were you when Mom died?" The pain that crossed Jackson's face was so raw that even Emma felt it. Outside, thunder cracked as the storm intensified, matching the emotional tempest brewing inside the small diner. The tension in the diner was palpable as Jackson Reynolds stood frozen, his gaze locked on the three girls. Emma positioned herself protectively between them, unsure of what to do next. The few remaining customers watched the scene unfold with undisguised curiosity. "Lily, take your sisters back to the pantry," Emma said quietly, not taking her eyes off Jackson. "No," Lily replied, her voice barely audible. "If he has something to say to us, I want to hear it." Jackson took a hesitant step forward, then stopped when Lily flinched. "I've been looking for you," he said, his voice trembling. "For 6 years I've had private investigators searching everywhere." "Liar," Lily spat, though uncertainty flickered across her young face. "Mom said our father didn't want us." "Is that what Rebecca told you?" Jackson's face contorted with pain. "She disappeared with you when you were just babies. I came home one day to find everything gone. You, her, even your cribs." Frank cleared his throat loudly. "Perhaps this family reunion could happen somewhere more private?" Emma nodded. "My shift ends in 20 minutes. We can talk at my apartment." Jackson looked ready to protest the delay but seemed to think better of it when he saw the fear in the girl's eyes. "Of course," he said, reaching into his pocket for a business card. "My number. Please call when you're ready." As Jackson reluctantly departed, Emma guided the sisters back to the pantry. Hazel was crying silently while Sophie looked confused. Lily's face had hardened into a mask. "Do you recognize him?" Emma asked gently. Lily shook her head. "Mom never showed us pictures. She just said he was rich and powerful and didn't want the responsibility of children." "But we saw his picture in a magazine once," Sophie added quietly. "Mom got really upset and threw it away." Emma's mind raced. Could this be a case of mistaken identity? But Jackson had seemed so certain, and the girls' unusual situation suddenly made more sense if they were the missing children of a wealthy businessman. "We're not going with him," Lily stated firmly. "We don't know him." "No one's forcing you to go anywhere," Emma assured her, though she wondered what legal rights Jackson might have as their father. "Let's just hear what he has to say." When Emma's shift ended, she called the number on Jackson's card. He answered immediately as if he'd been staring at his phone, waiting. 20 minutes later, they all sat awkwardly in Emma's tiny living room. Jackson had removed his expensive coat but still looked painfully out of place among the second-hand furniture. "I can prove I'm your father," he said, opening a leather portfolio. "I have birth certificates, photos from the day you were born." His hands trembled as he laid out the documents. "I never stopped looking for you. Never." Sophie leaned forward cautiously to examine a photograph of 2 newborn babies. "That's us?" "You and Lily," Jackson confirmed. "Identical twins. You arrived first, then Lily 3 minutes later. Hazel wasn't born yet. Rebecca was pregnant when she left." Lily's defensive posture wavered as she stared at the evidence of a history she couldn't remember. The small apartment grew quiet as Jackson pulled out more photographs, a wedding picture with a beautiful blonde woman, another showing her pregnant, and finally a legal document with missing persons report stamped across the top. "Rebecca and I met at Columbia," Jackson began, his voice strained. "It was a whirlwind romance. We married after graduation, just before my career took off. When she got pregnant with twins, we were ecstatic." Emma watched the girls' faces as they absorbed his words. Hazel had edged closer to the photos, fascination overcoming her fear. "What happened?" Emma asked gently. Jackson's shoulders sagged. We had a fight. A stupid argument about my work hours. I was building my company, working 18-hour days. Rebecca wanted me home more. He rubbed his forehead. I said things I regretted immediately. The next morning, I brought flowers to apologize, but the house was empty. She'd taken the twins and disappeared. Lily's eyes narrowed. Mom said you chose your business over your family. I chose both, Jackson countered, his voice breaking. Or I tried to. I never got the chance to prove that to her. If you were looking for us, how come you never found us? Sophie asked, her voice small but direct. Rebecca changed her name. Your names too, apparently. She withdrew cash, left no paper trail. Jackson's hand trembled as he placed a business card on the table. This is the private investigator I hired. He's been working your case for 6 years. Then how did you find us now? Lily challenged. Jackson's expression darkened with grief. 2 weeks ago, my investigator found an obituary for a Rebecca Bennett. The photo matched. I flew back from Tokyo immediately for the funeral, hoping to find you there, but you never showed up. Emma glanced at Lily, understanding dawning. The funeral was private, just the 3 of them. Mom didn't want a big service, Lily whispered, tears finally breaking through her tough exterior. She said people would just pretend to care. I would have been there, Jackson said, leaning forward. I would have been there for all of it. Her illness, the hospital bills, everything, if only I'd known. The hospital bills, Sophie repeated, understanding blooming in her young eyes. That's why we lost our apartment. Jackson looked stricken. You were evicted? Where have you been living? The sisters exchanged glances, none willing to admit the truth. Emma answered for them. They've been staying in various shelters, recently under a highway overpass. The color drained from Jackson's face, his hands clenched until the knuckles turned white. My daughters, homeless, he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. While I lived in a penthouse with empty bedrooms, for the first time Lily's expression softened slightly. Mom did her best, she said defensively. She was really sick for a long time. I believe you, Jackson said gently. And I'm not here to replace her or erase her memory. I just want a chance to be your father, the father I never got to be. The silence that followed was heavy with 6 years of separation and misunderstanding. The next day, Emma sat cross-legged on her apartment floor, watching Jackson awkwardly perch on her second-hand sofa. The girls clustered together on the opposite, and maintaining a careful distance. The atmosphere was fragile, like thin ice over deep water. I thought we could start by just talking, Emma suggested, trying to ease the tension. No pressure, no big decisions today. Jackson nodded gratefully. He'd traded yesterday's business suit for jeans and a sweater, clearly an attempt to appear less intimidating. I brought something, he said, reaching for his messenger bag. Photos of your mother that you might not have seen. This captured their attention. Sophie slid slightly closer as Jackson pulled out a leather album. This was your mom at graduation, he said, pointing to a laughing young woman in a cap and gown, her blonde hair catching sunlight. She was valedictorian. Mom was really smart, Hazel piped up, the first words she'd spoken all morning. Emboldened, she moved closer, peering at the album with undisguised curiosity. The smartest person I've ever known, Jackson agreed, his voice warm with memory. She could solve the Sunday crossword in pen. She still did that, Sophie whispered. Even in the hospital. Jackson's smile was painful to witness. She loved puzzles of all kinds. Is that something you like too? The conversation slowly unfolded, stilted at first, then gradually warming as Jackson shared gentle stories about their mother's quirks and talents. Lily remained vigilant, but even she leaned forward when Jackson described their mother's love of painting. That's where you get your artistic abilities, he told Lily, nodding toward the drawings Emma had hung on her refrigerator. Rebecca could capture emotion in just a few brushstrokes. Did you really look for us? Hazel asked suddenly, now sitting close enough to touch Jackson's sleeve. The whole time? Every single day, Jackson answered, his voice thick. I have a private investigator who's been working exclusively on finding you for 6 years. Are you really our dad? Sophie asked, the question everyone had been circling. Jackson's eyes filled with tears. Every day since you were born, he whispered. Even when I couldn't find you, I was still your father. Looking at their faces, identical to the childhood photos of Rebecca that Jackson had shown them, Emma knew there could be no question of paternity. The resemblance was too strong to deny. I have a house, Jackson said carefully, in Manhattan, with plenty of room for each of you to have your own bedroom. Lily stiffened immediately. We're not going anywhere with a stranger. Lily. Emma began. No! The 12-year-old stood up. We don't know him. We only have each other, and we're staying with Emma. Jackson looked stricken, but nodded slowly. I understand your caution. Maybe we could start with visits? Get to know each other first? The compromise hung in the air, a tenuous bridge between worlds. Emma stood by the window of her apartment, watching as Jackson's sleek Bentley pulled up to the curb below. It had been 3 days since their first meeting, and today the girls had agreed to visit his Manhattan home. Do we have to go? Lily asked, adjusting the collar of her newly purchased coat. Jackson had sent over clothes for all 3 sisters. Nothing flashy or expensive looking, Emma noted with approval. Just clean, well-made basics. No one's forcing you, Emma reminded her gently. But sometimes the things that scare us most are the things we need to face. Sophie was already by the door, excitement barely contained in her 9-year-old frame. Hazel clutched her teddy bear, torn between following Sophie's enthusiasm and Lily's caution. What if he wants to keep us? Lily whispered, her voice betraying her deepest fear. What if we never see you again? Emma knelt before the girl, meeting her eyes. Listen to me. Nothing happens without your say-so. You're visiting, not moving in. I'll be right there with you the whole time. Promise? Hazel asked, her small hand slipping. Into Emma's, I promise. Downstairs, Jackson waited beside the car, nervousness evident in his stance. For a man who reportedly negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, he looked terrified at the prospect of spending an afternoon with 3 children. The drive to Manhattan was quiet, the city transforming around them as they crossed the bridge. Gleaming skyscrapers replaced Brooklyn's brick facades, crowds thickened, and suddenly they were pulling into a private underground parking beneath one of the tallest buildings overlooking Central Park. You live here? Sophie breathed, pressing her face against the window. The top 2 floors, Jackson replied, his voice carefully neutral, as if conscious that his wealth might further alienate them. Emma felt Lily's hand tighten around hers as the elevator whisked them upward. When the doors opened directly into the penthouse foyer, all 3 girls froze, overwhelmed by the expanse of marble and glass before them. I know it's a lot, Jackson said quickly, but I thought you might like to see your rooms. If you decide to stay sometimes, you'd each have your own space. Hazel's eyes widened. We get different rooms? The question broke Emma's heart. How crowded must their life have been for separate bedrooms to seem like an unimaginable luxury? Jackson led them through the apartment, each room more impressive than the last. Sophie gasped at the library with floor-to-ceiling shelves. Mom would have loved this, she whispered to no one in particular. Then came the bedrooms. Jackson had prepared 3, each decorated differently but with thoughtful details. Hazel's had a canopy bed with fairy lights. Sophie's featured a telescope, pointed toward the park. And Lily's. My drawings, Lily said, her voice faltering as she stepped into the room. The walls were adorned with framed artwork, exact replicas of the sketches she'd given Emma, professionally enlarged and preserved. I had them scanned from Emma's photos, Jackson explained. I thought you might want to see your art treated with the respect it deserves. As Lily stood transfixed by her artwork, Emma noticed a door left slightly ajar at the end of the hallway. Curiosity drew her forward while Jackson continued showing the girls their rooms. Inside was clearly Jackson's home office, a sleek desk overlooking the Manhattan skyline, walls lined with awards and business achievements. But what caught Emma's I was a table covered with folders, each labeled meticulously by date. She picked up the nearest one, her breath catching as she read, Bennett Sisters Investigation Report. Inside were photographs, grainy surveillance images of Rebecca in various locations over the years, medical records, school registration attempts. 6 years of searching compressed into paper trails. The most recent folder contained a newspaper obituary clipping, the lead that had finally brought Jackson to Brooklyn. I see you found my war room. Emma startled at Jackson's voice behind her. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. It's all right, he said, stepping into the office. I wanted you to see this anyway. I need you to understand I never abandoned them. Before Emma could respond, Lily appeared in the doorway, her eyes immediately drawn to the investigation files. What is all this? She asked, her voice barely audible. Jackson hesitated before answering. Every lead, every possible sighting of you and your mother for the past 6 years. My investigator would send weekly reports, even when there was nothing. To report. Lily approached the table cautiously, lifting a photograph of a playground. In the background, barely visible, were 3 small figures. That was at our old school, she whispered, before Mom got sick. She looked up at Jackson, confusion evident in her eyes. You were that close to finding us? Dozens of times, Jackson admitted. Your mother was very careful. By the time my investigator would reach a location, you'd be gone. Emma watched as Lily's carefully constructed wall of resentment began to crack. The evidence of Jackson's persistence was impossible to deny. Lily! Lily! Sophie's excited voice echoed from the hallway. You have to see the view from my room. You can see the whole park. Jackson glanced at Lily, then Emma. Would you like to join your sisters? The sunset over Central Park is quite remarkable. Lily gave a small nod, carefully returning the photograph to its folder before following Jackson. Out. Emma lingered, overwhelmed by the physical manifestation of a father's 6-year quest. It was impossible to fake this level of dedication. Later, as they gathered in the enormous kitchen, Jackson awkwardly attempted to make dinner, burning toast, and overcooking pasta in a way that made even Hazel giggle. Emma stepped in, guiding him through the basics while the girls watched from the counter stools. He's really bad at this, Sophie whispered loudly to Lily. Worse than when you tried to make birthday pancakes, Hazel agreed. For the first time, since meeting Jackson, Lily's smile reached her eyes. Maybe he needs cooking lessons as much as we need, whatever this is. The morning sun filtered through the grimy windows of Sunshine Diner as Emma wiped down the counter, her movements automatic after years of the same routine. Yet everything had changed. The 3 little faces that had become her daily purpose were absent, now waking up in Manhattan penthouses with Central Park views. You miss them, Frank observed, surprising Emma with his perception. The gruff manager leaned against the register, arms crossed. Those girls got under your skin. They're still adjusting, Emma replied, avoiding his gaze. Jackson texts me, updates every few hours. Frank raised an eyebrow. First name basis with a billionaire, huh? Never thought I'd see the day. Emma felt her cheeks warm. In the week since the girls had begun staying with Jackson, her own life had taken on a strange duality. Days at the diner, evenings spent on video calls with 3 excited children showing off their new discoveries. The bell above the door jingled, and Emma turned to see Jackson himself walking in, looking distinctly out of place in his tailored suit. Several customers stared openly. Emma, he greeted, sliding onto a stool. Got a minute? Frank nudged her. Take your break. I'll cover your tables. Outside, they walked along the quiet Brooklyn street, an odd pair, the waitress and the tycoon. The girls are settling in, but it's been challenging, Jackson admitted, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. Hazel had a nightmare. I didn't know what to do. You sat with her until she fell back asleep, Emma guessed. Jackson looked surprised. How did you know? Because that's what she needs. Simple human contact. Emma smiled softly. You're learning. They stopped at a small park, watching children play on swings. I keep making mistakes, Jackson said. Yesterday I hired a tutor to assess where they are academically. Lily refused to participate, said it felt like a test she hadn't studied for. She's protective of her sisters, Emma explained. She's been their mother figure for so long. Every decision you make feels like it undermines her authority. Jackson was quiet for a moment. Would you consider having dinner with us tonight? The girls miss you, and frankly, he added with a self-deprecating smile, I could use the help. The request hung between them, weighted with implications neither was ready to address. The call came at 2 a.m., jarring Emma from sleep. Jackson's voice was tight with panic. It's Sophie. She's burning up with fever. The doctor is on his way, but she keeps asking for you. Emma was in a taxi within minutes, clutching her coat over pajamas. The city blurred past as she stared at the phone where Jackson had sent a photo of Sophie's flushed face against silk pillows. When she arrived at the penthouse, chaos greeted her. A stern-looking doctor was directing two nurses while Jackson paced, disheveled and frantic. Lily and Hazel huddled together on a sofa, terrified. Emma! Hazel cried, running to her. Sophie's really sick. Where is she? Emma asked, hugging the child briefly before addressing the room. Master bedroom, the doctor replied. I've administered medication, but her fever remains concerning. Emma found Sophie curled in Jackson's enormous bed, small and fragile against the luxurious bedding. Her cheeks blazed with fever, hair plastered to her forehead. Hey, sweetie, Emma whispered, sitting beside her. Sophie's eyes fluttered open. Emma, she mumbled, don't feel good. I know, honey. Emma stroked her hair gently. But we're going. To make you better. Jackson appeared in the doorway, watching as Emma expertly checked Sophie's temperature and adjusted the cool cloth on her forehead. I've been useless, he admitted quietly. I panicked and called everyone. My personal physician, a pediatric specialist, 2 nurses. Emma glanced around at the medical entourage. Sophie doesn't need an army. She needs comfort and hydration. She turned to the professionals. Thank you for coming, but I think we can handle it from here. The doctor can check in tomorrow morning. After some discussion, the medical team departed, leaving instructions and medication. Jackson watched in amazement as Emma transformed his kitchen into a makeshift sick room station, preparing ice packs, brewing ginger tea, and mixing honey with lemon. How do you know all this? He asked as she carried a tray toward the bedroom. Practice, Emma replied simply. The girls caught colds last winter. We couldn't afford doctors, so I learned what worked. In the bedroom, Lily and Hazel had climbed onto the bed beside their sister. Jackson hesitated at the threshold, uncertain of his place. Come on, Emma encouraged. Your daughter needs you too. Hours passed. Sophie drifted in and out of sleep, while Emma gently coaxed fluids into her. Jackson sat awkwardly at first, then with growing confidence reading stories when Sophie was awake and simply being present when she wasn't. Near dawn, with Sophie's fever finally breaking, Lily unexpectedly spoke. Mom used to sing to us when we were sick, she said, watching her sister sleep. She wasn't very good, but it always made us feel better. Jackson's expression softened. What did she sing? Old Disney songs, mostly. She loved Beauty and the Beast. A fragile moment of connection bloomed in the quiet room. For the first time, Lily was offering a memory freely, a tentative bridge between their old life and whatever this new one might become. 3 weeks had passed since Sophie's fever, a turning point that had subtly shifted the dynamic between Jackson and his daughters. Emma noticed the changes each time she visited, how Hazel now ran to greet her father when he returned from work, how Sophie would curl up beside him during movie nights, and most significantly, how Lily had begun to soften around the edges. A crisp Saturday morning, Jackson invited Emma to join them for brunch at a small cafe near Central Park. As the girls chatted animatedly about their new school placements, Emma observed the transformation in their faces, the haunted look gradually replaced by the ordinary exuberance of childhood. Could we speak privately for a moment? Jackson asked as the girls became absorbed in an impromptu game of tic-tac-toe on a napkin. They walked to a quiet corner of the restaurant, Jackson uncharacteristically nervous, fidgeting with his coffee cup. "I've been thinking about everything that's happened," he began. "About how many children must be in the same situation my daughters were in. Homeless, hungry, invisible to people like me who have the means to help." Emma listened, curious where this was leading. "I want to create a foundation," Jackson continued, his voice gaining confidence, "for homeless children and families. Not just another charity that throws money at the problem, but something that addresses the real issues: housing stability, education continuity, medical care." "That's incredible," Emma said, genuinely impressed. "I want you to run it." The words hung between them, unexpected and transformative. "Me? But I'm just a waitress. I don't know the first thing about running a foundation." Jackson shook his head. "You know more than all my business associates combined about what these families actually need. You saw my daughters when no one else did. You fed them when you could barely feed yourself." The intensity in his eyes made Emma look away. "It's a generous offer, but it's not charity," Jackson said, echoing her own words from weeks ago. "It's recognizing value. Come with me. I want to show you something." After arranging for a nanny to watch the girls, Jackson drove Emma to an abandoned warehouse in a neglected Brooklyn neighborhood. The massive brick building stood silent, windows boarded up, yet somehow dignified in its disrepair. "This building has been empty for years," Jackson explained as they walked the perimeter. "My company acquired it in a portfolio purchase. I've been trying to decide what to do with it." Emma could see potential in the soaring ceilings and sturdy walls. "What are you thinking?" "A community center, emergency housing upstairs, health clinic, job training, whatever is needed." His eyes met hers. "I have the resources, Emma, but not the vision. That's where you come in." As they stood in the cavernous main floor, sunlight streaming through broken windows, Emma felt something shift inside her, a recognition that perhaps her path had been leading here all along. "What would you call it?" she asked, beginning to envision the possibilities. Jackson smiled. "The Three Sisters Project, because everything changed when 3 brave little girls knocked on your back door." 6 months had passed since that day. At the warehouse, and the Three Sisters Project was rapidly taking shape. The once abandoned building now hummed with activity as construction crews transformed the space according to Emma's vision and Jackson's resources. Emma stood in what would soon be the community center's main hall, clipboard in hand as she reviewed the progress with the site manager. Sunlight streamed through newly installed windows, illuminating the potential of what this place could become. "Ms. Chase? Mr. Reynolds is here to see you," an assistant called from the doorway. Emma turned to see Jackson walking toward her. 3 excited girls trailing behind him. School had ended early today, and he'd brought them to see the latest developments in the project that bore their name. "Emma!" Hazel cried, running ahead to wrap her arms around Emma's waist. At 7 now, she'd grown an inch since spring and had lost her first tooth the previous week, an event Emma had been summoned to witness with all appropriate ceremony. "The place looks amazing," Jackson said, gazing around at the transformation. "You've accomplished more in 6 months than most of my development projects do in a year." "That's because we're not building luxury condos," Emma replied with a smile. "People are eager to help when it's for children." The changes weren't limited to the warehouse. Emma had witnessed the gradual rebuilding of a family over these months, the tentative bonds strengthening day by day. Sophie had blossomed in her new school, revealing a gift for mathematics that astonished her teachers. Hazel had made friends quickly, her natural exuberance returning after years of necessary caution. And Lily, perhaps the most remarkable transformation of all, had slowly lowered her defenses. She still maintained a watchful eye over her sisters, but there was room now for other things: art classes that nurtured her talent, therapy sessions that helped her process her grief, and most surprisingly, a growing connection with her father. "Can we show Emma what we made for the new rooms?" Sophie asked, bouncing on her toes. Jackson nodded, and Lily carefully produced a large portfolio from her backpack. Inside were 3 painted canvases, one from each sister, designed to hang in the children's recreation area of the community center. "These are beautiful," Emma said, genuinely impressed by the artwork. Lily's piece showed 3 small figures holding hands against a vibrant cityscape. "They'll be perfect for the space." After touring the construction site, they walked to a nearby park. The autumn air was crisp, leaves crunching beneath their feet as Hazel and Sophie raced ahead to the playground. "I have those funding proposals ready for you to review," Emma told Jackson as they settled on a bench watching the younger girls climb on the jungle gym. "It can wait until tomorrow," Jackson replied, his attention focused on his daughters. Today is about family. The word hung between them, weighted with meaning. Over these months, Emma had become an integral part of their lives, spending weekends at the penthouse, helping with homework, and navigating the complex emotional territory of 3 children healing from profound loss. Lily had wandered to a nearby tree, seemingly lost in thought. Jackson watched her with a mixture of pride and lingering sadness. "She still keeps a distance," he observed quietly. "She's made incredible progress," Emma reminded him. "Remember how she wouldn't even speak to you directly 6 months ago?" As if sensing they were talking about her, Lily glanced over. To Emma's surprise, the girl began walking toward Jackson instead of her, determination in her step. "Dad?" Lily said, the word still new on her tongue. She'd only recently begun calling him that, each utterance a gift that visibly moved Jackson. "Could you help me with something?" "Anything," Jackson replied, perhaps too eagerly. "I want to enter the city art competition, but the form needs a parent's signature." She held out a crumpled application. "Would you sign it?" Such a simple request, but Emma saw the profound significance of the moment. Lily wasn't just asking for a signature. She was acknowledging Jackson as her father, accepting his place in her life. "I'd be honored," Jackson said, his voice thick with emotion. From the playground, Hazel's voice suddenly rang out. "Dad, look at me." All 3 turned to see Hazel at the top of the slide waving proudly. It was the first time she had called him Dad unprompted, the word falling naturally from her lips as if she'd been saying it her entire life. The look on Jackson's face was worth all the heartache that had come before. A man who had found what he had been searching for, not just his children, but his place in their hearts. That night, as Emma prepared to leave the penthouse after dinner, Jackson walked her to the elevator. Something had shifted between them too, an unspoken current that neither had been brave enough to acknowledge. "Stay," he said simply, the word encompassing far more than just that evening. Emma hesitated, the complications of their situation weighing on her mind. "It's not that simple, Jackson." "It could be," he countered, his eyes sincere. "The girls need you, and I—" He paused, vulnerable in a way the powerful businessman rarely allowed himself to be. "I need you too." Before Emma could respond, the elevator doors opened, offering an escape from a conversation she wasn't ready to have. As October arrived, bringing a chill to the New York air, an important date approached on the family calendar, Lily's 13th birthday. The first milestone celebration since the sisters had come to live with Jackson, it carried a weight of expectation that had him unusually anxious. "I've reserved the rooftop garden at the Meridian," Jackson told Emma as they walked through the nearly completed community center. "Their event planner is handling everything: decorations, entertainment, catering." Emma glanced at him sideways. "Did you ask Lily what she wanted for her birthday?" Jackson faltered. "I assumed every 13-year-old would want a spectacular party. I've invited her classmates, some business associates with children her age." "Jackson," Emma said gently, "this is Lily we're talking about. The girl who spent years protecting her sisters from the world. Has she ever struck you as someone who enjoys being the center of attention among strangers?" His face fell as recognition dawned. "I've made a mistake, haven't I?" "Maybe just talk to her," Emma suggested. "Ask her what would make her birthday special." That evening, Jackson found Lily sketching by the window of her bedroom, the Manhattan skyline her backdrop. 6 months had softened the wariness in her eyes, but there remained a thoughtfulness beyond her years. "Lily, about your birthday next week?" he began. She looked up, her expression guarded. "The big party at the Meridian? Sophie told me." "Would you like something different?" he asked carefully. "It's your day, after all." Lily set down her sketchbook. "I don't want a big party with people I barely know," she admitted. "For my last birthday, Mom was in the hospital. We had cupcakes in her room with Emma. It wasn't much, but—" her voice trailed off. "But it was family," Jackson finished for her. Lily nodded. "Just us and Emma. That's all I want." The morning of Lily's birthday, Jackson canceled the elaborate event with a single phone call. Instead, he arranged something far simpler, a picnic in Central Park, with a checkered blanket spread beneath golden autumn trees. Sophie and Hazel helped prepare sandwiches. Lily's favorite cookies were packed in a basket, and a small chocolate cake waited in a box. When they arrived at the park, Emma was already waiting, a wrapped gift in her hands. The five of them settled. On the blanket, an unlikely family formed through loss and hope and stubborn perseverance. "This is perfect," Lily said softly, looking around at the circle of faces she had come to trust. After cake and presents, as Sophie and Hazel chased falling leaves nearby, Lily reached into her backpack and pulled out a carefully wrapped package. "I made something for you," she told Jackson, uncharacteristic nervousness in her voice. Inside was a framed drawing, the three sisters standing beside Jackson and Emma, all holding hands. Across the bottom, in Lily's precise lettering, were the words, "The Reynolds family." "It's the first time I've used that name," Lily explained, watching his reaction carefully. "Mom will always be part of us, but I think maybe we can be Reynolds too." Jackson stared at the drawing, unable to speak past the tightness in his throat. In 6 short months, they had traveled light years from that first tense meeting in the diner. "Thank you," he finally managed, his voice thick with emotion. "This means everything to me." As the afternoon light faded to early evening, Jackson looked around at his makeshift family, Emma helping Hazel collect colorful leaves, Sophie explaining a math concept she'd learned in school, and Lily, finally allowing herself to be simply a 13-year-old girl on her birthday. The journey wasn't over, but they had found their way to solid ground. The new year had brought a renewed sense of purpose as the Three Sisters project prepared for its official opening. Emma had transitioned from waitress to foundation director, a transformation that still sometimes left her dizzy with disbelief. The girls were thriving in their new schools, and Jackson had restructured his business to allow more family time. A snowy January morning, Emma arrived at the penthouse for their weekly planning breakfast to find Jackson, staring grimly at his tablet. "What's wrong?" she asked, immediately sensing his tension. "This," he said, sliding the tablet toward her. The headline made her blood run cold. "Hidden Agenda. Waitress with foster system past orchestrates reunion of billionaire with long-lost daughters." The article detailed Emma's childhood in foster care, insinuating she had manipulated the situation for financial gain. Anonymous sources claimed she had known about Jackson's search for his daughters long before their chance meeting at the diner. "It's all lies," Emma whispered, her hands shaking. "Of course it is," Jackson agreed, his voice tight with anger. "My legal team is already working to have it retracted." Before they could discuss further, Lily burst into the room, eyes wild with panic. "Is it true?" she demanded, thrusting her phone at Emma. "Did you know about us all along? Was everything just a setup to get close to Dad's money?" "Lily, no," Emma began, but the girl was already backing away. "I trusted you," Lily whispered, her voice breaking. "We all did." Before either adult could stop her, Lily grabbed her coat and fled the apartment. The elevator doors closed on her tear-streaked face as Jackson lunged forward too late. "I'll find her," he promised Emma, already dialing security. She couldn't have gone far. But as hours passed with no sign of Lily, panic set in. Sophie and Hazel huddled together on the sofa while Emma and Jackson coordinated with police, private security, and Jackson's investigator. She's been gone 8 hours, Emma said, staring out at the darkening city. Snow was falling heavily now, temperatures dropping dangerously low. Where would she go? A sudden realization struck her. The overpass? Their old shelter? Within minutes, they were in Jackson's car fighting through snowbound traffic toward Brooklyn. The spot beneath the BQE where the sisters had once sought refuge was now nearly unrecognizable, just another shadowy corner in a city of millions. "Lily," Emma called, her voice swallowed by the wind. "Lily, please." Jackson followed, his expensive shoes sinking into dirty slush. "We're not angry," he added. "We just want you safe." A small movement caught Emma's eye, a flash of color in the shadows. There, huddled against a concrete pillar, was Lily, her coat pulled tight around her thin frame, eyes red from crying. "Go away," she said when they approached. "I don't want to talk to either of you." Emma crouched beside her, ignoring the biting cold. "Then don't talk. Just listen. Everything in that article about me is a lie. I never knew about you or your father until that day in the diner." "Why should I believe you?" Lily challenged, though her defiance was weakened by the tremor in her voice. Emma took a deep breath. "Because I never knew my biological father either." She glanced at Jackson before continuing. "I grew up in the system, bounced between foster homes until I aged out at 18. The one thing I always wanted was to belong somewhere. With someone. Jackson." Knelt in the snow beside them, heedless of his ruined suit. "The article was a hit piece from a rival developer who's angry about the foundation," he explained gently. "He's using you girls to try to hurt my business." Lily's hard expression began to crumble. "I was so scared," she admitted, "that this was all too good to be true, that we'd lose everything again." "You will never lose me," Jackson promised, his voice fierce with conviction. "You're my daughter. Nothing can change that." Emma reached for Lily's cold hand. "And you three gave me something I never had either, a family. I would never jeopardize that." As snowflakes swirled around them, an unlikely family huddled together beneath the same bridge that had once been the sisters' only shelter, finding, in that cold and forgotten place, the warmth of truth and reconciliation. A light snow dusted the grounds outside the newly renovated Three Sisters Project building as the crowd gathered for the grand opening ceremony. What had once been an abandoned warehouse was now a beacon of hope, its brick facade restored, windows gleaming, and a colorful mural of 3 girls holding hands spanning one entire wall. In the front row, Lily, Sophie, and Hazel sat together, dressed in matching blue dresses chosen for the occasion. 1 year had passed since that fateful meeting at Sunshine Diner, a year of healing, growth, and the careful construction of a family once thought irreparably broken. As Jackson stepped up to the podium, Emma watched from the side, pride swelling in her chest. The man who had once been defined solely by his wealth and business acumen now stood before the community as something far more important: a father, a philanthropist, a man transformed by love. "A year ago," Jackson began, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes, "I was a man who had everything the world values: money, power, success, and nothing that truly matters. I had spent 6 years searching for my daughters, never knowing if I would find them." He paused, his gaze finding his 3 girls in the audience. "What I never expected was that they would find me, not just physically, but they would find the father I was meant to be. They would teach me what no business school ever could, that true wealth is measured in moments of connection, in overcoming fear with trust, in choosing to love even when it's difficult." The crowd was silent, captivated by the raw honesty in his words. Among them sat Frank from the diner, beaming with pride at Emma, and teachers from the girls' schools, and dozens of families who would soon benefit from the center's programs. "This project," Jackson continued, gesturing to the building behind him, "is named for 3 extraordinary young women who survived unimaginable challenges with courage and grace. But it's also named for the 3 pillars we believe can transform lives: safety, opportunity, and belonging." As Jackson finished his speech to enthusiastic applause, Emma noticed Lily whispering something to her sisters. The three girls nodded in agreement before Lily raised her hand. "I think my daughter has something to say," Jackson announced, surprise evident in his voice. Lily approached the podium, her initial nervousness giving way to determination as she faced the crowd. At 13, she stood taller now, her shoulders straight, her eyes clear and focused. "A year ago," she began, echoing her father's opening, "my sisters and I were hungry and afraid. Our mom had died, and we thought we were completely alone in the world." Her voice trembled slightly, but she continued. "What saved us wasn't just food or shelter. It was a waitress who saw us when we were invisible to everyone else. It was a father who never stopped looking for us even when everyone told him to give up." She looked directly at Emma, then at Jackson. "I used to think family was just who you're born to. Now I know it's the people who choose you, again and again, even when it's hard. It's the ones who stay when it would be easier to walk away." As Lily finished speaking, there wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Sophie and Hazel rushed forward to join their sister at the podium, followed by Jackson, who wrapped all three in his embrace. Emma remained at the side, watching the family portrait, with a full heart, until Hazel spotted her and called out, "Emma, you too, you're part of our family." As Emma joined their embrace, Jackson reached into his pocket and produced a small velvet box. The crowd gasped collectively as he dropped to one knee. "Emma Chase," he said, his voice clear despite the emotion. "You saw my daughters when they were invisible. You loved them when they had nothing to offer but themselves, and you taught me how to be the father they deserved. Will you complete our family and marry me?" Before Emma could answer, Hazel tugged at her sleeve and whispered loudly enough for the microphone to catch, "Say yes. We need a mom." Laughter rippled through the crowd as Emma knelt to be at eye level with the girls. "Is that what you all want?" she asked them, her voice gentle. Three heads nodded emphatically. "Then yes," Emma said, rising to meet Jackson's gaze. "Yes to all of you." As snowflakes danced around the newly engaged couple and the three sisters who had brought them together, the story that began with hunger and separation closed its circle with fullness and belonging. A family forged not by obligation, but by choice, by love that persisted even in the darkest of times.